I served as the chief palace maid to the Empress Dowager for 20 years. Calm and dignified. I was respected by all. No one knew. I had borne the emperor 2 children. It was only on her deathbed that the Empress Dowager discovered this secret affair. She held my hand, as if sighing. Silly child. You've kept this from me for so many years. I shall issue an imperial decree at once, allowing you to enter the palace as a concubine, so that mother and children may be reunited. In my past life, I did indeed enter the palace, but by then, Emperor Zhao Xun already had a consort he cherished above all else. He favored me for a time, then cast me aside without a second thought. Even my own children were made to acknowledge another woman as their mother. Now, reborn into this life, I no longer wish to be his consort. At the Empress Dowager's sickbed, I bowed my head deeply. This servant dares not seek the emperor's favor. I beg your majesty's mercy to allow this servant to leave the palace. Main text. The sandalwood incense in sighing palace burned softly. In the stillness, the Empress Dowager finally spoke, her voice weak. My child, what nonsense are you speaking? Since you have already shared a marital bond with the emperor and have a child, you should have a proper title. I know you have endured all these years out of fear that I might cause you trouble, but... She paused and sighed. This old woman does not have long to live. You must think of yourself. I choked back tears. I kowtowed once more. His Majesty's heart belongs solely to the imperial consort. His favor toward this humble servant was merely a mistake made in the heat of the moment. As for the 2 princes, my voice dropped. They have been raised in the imperial consort's palace for so many years. They have long regarded her as their birth mother and will not acknowledge me. It seemed to have touched upon a sensitive matter. The Empress Dowager closed her eyes and said no more. I, too, grew somber. Back when the Empress Dowager was still a young beauty, she did not enjoy the emperor's favor. At the emperor's behest, she had no choice but to personally hand over the 7-year-old Zhao Xun to the empress to raise. She raised him for 10 long years. 10 years later, the empress passed away, and the Empress Dowager had finally risen to the rank of consort, allowing her to raise her own child. Yet Zhao Xun recognized only the late empress as his mother. He refused to call her mother, instead addressing her indifferently as Her Majesty the Empress. His expression laced with sarcasm. Whenever this son was ill or in distress, it was the late empress who cared for me. Now that I have grown up and no longer need a mother, you suddenly wish to take me back. If this is how it is today, why did you abandon me back then? The Empress Dowager felt deeply guilty. She exerted every ounce of her strength to secure his position as crown prince. After Zhao Xun ascended the throne, the Empress Dowager relinquished her power entirely and retired to the inner palace. Yet, all these years, the bond between mother and son had never changed. The Empress Dowager sighed softly. Never mind. You are a good child. You must not follow in this old woman's footsteps. But Tao, the wealth and prestige of the imperial family, can you truly bear to give it all up? I fell silent. I was assigned to the Empress Dowager's palace at the age of 7, to serve as a cleaning maid. Now, 20 years have passed in the blink of an eye. I rose from a cleaning maid to the head maid of sighing palace. Even princes, as noble as they were, had to address me with the respectful title Ancient whenever they saw me. Yet when I saw Zhao Xun, I had to obediently kneel and submit to his will. The wealth and prestige of the imperial family can truly bend a person's spine and shatter their knees. Coming to my senses, I whispered, I can let him go. And the emperor. I froze. The Empress Dowager seemed to smile slightly, then asked me, the emperor, can you let him go too? I closed my eyes. A vision suddenly flashed through my mind. The day Zhao Xun moved into Funi Palace. The young man clutched my hand tightly. His voice choked with emotion. Ateo. Come with me. Mother has abandoned me. I can't bear to be without you anymore. I refused, choosing instead to stay by the Empress Dowager's side. The rain poured down in torrents. Zhao Xun stood there, at a loss, his expression a mix of tears and a faint smile. Looking like a stray dog. Many years later, on another rainy day just like that one, the Empress Dowager fell gravely ill. Yet all the imperial physicians were at the consort's palace. I went to plead with Zhao Xun. He reeked slightly of alcohol. He listened quietly as I explained my purpose, then said slowly and deliberately, "Agreed. Think carefully about what you'll offer in exchange." He lowered his eyelids and laughed mockingly. "I'm very curious to see just how far you'll go for the Empress Dowager." The blue silk curtain fell. Zhao Xun's movements were rough, almost crushing my bones. In a daze, I recalled the Empress Dowager once speaking with a smile of her plans for me. "I shall adopt you as my foster daughter, find a wealthy and peaceful family, and marry you off in grand style. Ateo. You will surely have a smooth and happy life, a harmonious marriage, and a house full of children." All of this vanished into thin air amidst the man's heavy panting. After he had his fill, Zhao Xun leaned down affectionately to nuzzle me, a smirk playing on his lips. "Why are you crying? Have you ever thought of marrying another man besides me?" This servant would never dare. With a hoarse voice, I begged him to grant me a proper status. Zhao Xun was not an irresponsible man. There was nothing particularly difficult about this matter. Yet he toyed with my hair, his smile cold and dismissive. "Since you trust the Empress Dowager so much, let her come and beg me. As long as she begs me, I will grant you a proper status." I knew Zhao Xun intended to humiliate the Empress Dowager through this. The Empress Dowager had been kind to me. I did not wish to put her in such a difficult position. The matter was left at that, until the imperial consort deliberately made things difficult for me, punishing me by forcing me to kneel in the sun for 3 hours. I couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. When I woke up, Zhao Xun was holding my hand, his expression unusually gentle. "A Tao, you are with child." The imperial consort stood beside him, letting out a soft sob. Hearing the sound, Zhao Xun turned, embraced her, and comforted her gently. When he looked at me again, his tone had turned cold. "The imperial consort has no children yet. Once you give birth to this child, it will be registered under her name, with imperial authority above all." I had no power to refuse. I could only be confined to the rear chambers of the Hall of Mental Cultivation to nurture the child and await delivery. The Empress Dowager, despite her frail health, inquired about the matter. But Zhao Xun brushed her off with a few brief words. The moment the twins were born, they were taken to the imperial consort's palace. He looked down at me, his expression indifferent. "From now on, you have no connection to them." I remembered those words. All these years, I devoted myself entirely to serving the Empress Dowager, never once overstepping my bounds, until the Empress Dowager inadvertently heard the whole story from the imperial consort. Her hand trembled as she slapped me, her eyes red with anger. "How dare you keep such a major matter from me? Had I known sooner, I would have granted you a proper title no matter what. I would never have let you suffer such humiliation all these years." Once she had calmed down, she embraced me tenderly and asked if I wished to be reunited with my children. In that moment, my heart stirred slightly, even if I didn't vie for favor. Living a peaceful life in the harem with these 2 children would be enough. But I was wrong. The imperial consort was the late empress's niece and had been by Zhao Xun's side for 10 years. They were the true picture of a perfect match. Having grown up together since childhood, Zhao Xun had once favored me. Perhaps it was to demonstrate filial piety, or perhaps for other reasons. My favor even surpassed that of the imperial consort. I was the talk of the palace, but the imperial consort would never let it rest. She repeatedly turned against me. Those 2 children also detested me intensely and sided with her against me. Zhao Xun knew of my grievances, yet he couldn't be bothered to intervene. When he looked at me, there was only contempt. The palace was desolate and silent, filled with nothing but torment. My health grew worse day by day. As I lay on my deathbed, the imperial consort became empress. She came to see me one last time, her face radiant with a smile. "You, my dear, should never have entered the palace. You have neither family lineage nor any bond with His Majesty. What do you have to compete with me?" I pleaded with the Empress Dowager. "No matter what, She must let me stay far away from Zhao Xun. She was silent for a long moment. Under heaven, all is the Emperor's domain. Moreover, the Emperor is a man far wiser than either you or I. Even if you were to flee to the ends of the earth, as long as he wishes it, he can have you brought back. Unless... She looked pensive, slowly closing her eyes. I have made up my mind. You may withdraw. Send eunuch Hong in. I have matters to discuss with him. The hall outside was filled with kneeling princes, ministers, concubines, and members of the imperial clan. The Empress Dowager held on for half an hour longer than she had in her previous life. As the sun began to set, eunuch Hong emerged, his expression sorrowful. The Empress Dowager has passed away. The air froze for a second. Zhao Xun raised his head, his face expressionless. Did the Empress Dowager leave any final words for me? Eunuch Hong shook his head. None. His gaze swept past the stiff-bodied man and landed on me. Before her passing, the Empress Dowager left only a will for Miss Shin. She instructed me to make it public once the funeral rites are complete. Zhao Xun's gaze fell upon my face, and he gave a soft snort. The side hall of Sighing Palace. I bent low to serve tea to him and the imperial consort. The imperial consort suddenly covered her mouth with a smile. I suppose it won't be long before I have to call Aunt Shin sister. Will it? Zhao Xun took a sip of tea, his tone flat. She is unworthy. The imperial consort scolded playfully. How is she unworthy? The Empress Dowager dotes on Aunt Shin the most. Naturally. She'll do everything in her power to place her by your Majesty's side. So they all thought that I would beg the Empress Dowager to bring me into the palace. I took a step back and knelt with dignity. Your Highness, please see clearly. This servant has absolutely no intention of climbing the dragon's back or clinging to the phoenix's wings. No sooner had the words left my mouth than a teacup was knocked over. Porcelain shards flew everywhere, and scalding tea poured down my front. I raised my eyes to meet Zhao Xun's dark, brooding gaze. He remarked indifferently, You have disrespected your superiors and spoken back to the imperial consort. From this moment on, you shall kneel before the Empress Dowager's memorial altar and not leave for a single moment. I knelt before the Empress Dowager's memorial tablet for 7 full days. On the final night, all the mourners had left. Only I remained, kneeling in a daze, in a moment of confusion. I heard 2 voices whispering, Is this our birth mother? Father Emperor said it himself. Aunt Shin is our real mother, and she'll be raising us from now on. I refused to be raised by a lowly servant. It was the indignant voice of the crown prince. The second prince seemed hesitant. But Aunt Shin has always been kind to us. Last time we broke the begonia that father loved, she took the blame for us and was punished with 10 lashes by father. The crown prince stamped his foot in frustration. We are princes of high birth. If we were raised by such a lowly birth mother, wouldn't we be the subject of ridicule throughout the realm, between the noble consort and a mere maid? Can't you see which choice is clear? After a long silence, the second prince muttered gloomily. What you say does seem to make sense. The voices gradually faded away. I gave a self-deprecating smile, forced myself to my feet, and went to refill the lamp with oil. The moment I stood up, everything went black. Someone caught me, their voice filled with urgency. Ateo. Ateo. When I regained consciousness, I was in the bedchamber, its air heavy with dragon saliva incense. Zhao Xun released me without a flicker of emotion, his eyes cast downward. You truly will stop at nothing to gain my attention. I froze. It was only through eunuch Hong's reminder that I learned the truth. Last night, Zhao Xun had originally intended to accompany the consort of honor for supper, but when he passed by the memorial hall, he found me collapsed and stayed by my side all night. His expression was icy. Do not think that simply because you pleaded with the Empress Dowager to become my consort, you can act so brazenly. Once you enter the palace, if you continue to vie for favor and cause trouble in this manner, I will not let you off lightly. With matters having come to this, I knew no explanation would do any good. I shook my head and looked at eunuch Hong with a weary expression. The funeral rites are over. Please read the imperial edict. Zhao Xun snorted derisively. You really are in a hurry. Eunuch Hong cast a meaningful glance at him, then pulled the imperial edict from his robe and read it out, enunciating each word clearly. The palace maid Shen has served this Empress Dowager for many years, displaying reverence and diligence that have greatly pleased me. After my funeral procession, Shen is to leave the imperial city and guard my mausoleum, from which she may not depart until her death. As the words fell, Zhao Xun suddenly looked up. His expression darkened for a moment, but quickly returned to calm. I nodded thoughtfully. Guarding the tomb, that is quite good, though it will be a life of hardship. At least it is far from the place of strife. How thoughtful of Her Majesty, even as her life was drawing to a close. She still found this way out for me. I knelt and kowtowed in gratitude. This servant will strictly obey the Empress Dowager's final command. Eunuch Hong's gaze fell upon the two of us. He said, Please pack your belongings, Miss Shen, and leave the palace immediately with the Empress Dowager's coffin. He emphasized the word immediately with particular force. I had nothing to pack. The Empress Dowager's personal belongings had always been in my care. Years of accumulated gifts, jewels and trinkets offered by ministers and members of the imperial clan, and the occasional tokens of respect from Zhao Xun. Back then, she had said that once I was married, she would leave all of this to me as a dowry. But she passed away before I did. I had placed all these items inside her coffin. When I first entered the palace, I was penniless, with nothing to my name. Now, 20 years later, as I leave the palace, my pockets remain just as empty. The Empress Dowager was kind to her servants, and the maids of Sighing Palace were well off. A few young maids pulled some silver in, with tears in their eyes, tried to give it to me. I refused. Life in the palace was too hard. They needed the money more than I did. The setting sun cast its glow upon the vermilion walls. The ceremonial music began, and the Empress Dowager's remains were carried toward the imperial mausoleum. Before leaving the Forbidden City, someone secretly called me back. It was the two princes. The eldest prince wore a stern expression. Now that you're leaving, you'd better behave yourself and tend to our great-grandmother's tomb. If you dare covet what doesn't belong to you again, I won't let you off lightly. As he spoke, he shot the second prince a glare, as if urging him on. The second prince's young face crumpled as he spoke slowly. We have only the imperial consort as our mother. Even if you are our biological mother, we will never acknowledge you. I couldn't help but smile as I watched the two brothers. In my previous life, they were just like this, making things difficult for me at every turn. The only difference was that the older brother was domineering, while the younger was timid. The second prince was used to obeying his older brother's every word. Often, the crown prince would come up with an idea first, then half coerce his younger brother into joining him. Of the two brothers, the imperial consort favored the eldest son more. I shook my head, feigning surprise. What are you two little princes saying? Your Highness is the child of His Majesty and the imperial consorted descendant of the imperial line. Naturally, you have only the imperial consort as your mother. The crown prince froze, his expression a complex mix of emotions. The second prince's eyes suddenly reddened. What do you mean by that? I reached into my pocket and found a handful of osmanthus candies I hadn't had time to eat yet. I took them out and placed them in his hand, smiling as I stroked his cheek. It's getting dark, Your Highness. You should hurry home, or the imperial consort will worry. This intimate gesture did not go unnoticed by the crown prince. He turned his face away, his cheeks puffed with indignation. I curtsied and prepared to leave. As I turned around, the smile on my face froze. The sun was setting in the west, and a figure stood quietly in the fading light. Zhao Xun lowered his gaze to meet mine, a hint of mockery in his eyes. If you're so reluctant to leave, why are you leaving? What? I blinked. I was a bit confused. He said calmly, that behavior just now, were you trying to use your two biological children to make me personally ask you to come back? Playing hard to get, you're quite good at it. It took me a while to grasp what he meant. I shook my head repeatedly. This servant truly intends to guard the Empress Dowager's tomb. In going to the imperial mausoleum, this servant is prepared to spend the rest of my life by the Empress Dowager's side. Zhao Xun snorted lightly. You know full well that I won't let you languish there for the rest of your life. I looked up abruptly. He had already turned away, his face expressionless. Actually, every now and then, I could still catch a glimpse of his younger self in Zhao Xun. He wasn't entirely devoid of maternal affection for the Empress Dowager while she was alive, though he always treated her coldly. He would occasionally summon me to ask about her well-being. After the Empress Dowager passed away in my previous life, I once caught him sitting alone, clutching the mementos she left behind, weeping until dawn, inside the Empress Dowager's funeral chamber. White banners hung limply, the sound of chanting gradually faded away. I knelt beside the coffin, watching as the arriving princes and nobles gradually departed. Only Zhao Xun remained, dressed in mourning robes. Standing there with a somber gaze, his gaze shifted from the white banners to the Empress Dowager's body, and finally settled silently upon my gaunt back. Only after eunuch Hong urged him repeatedly did he finally turn to leave. Before departing, he tossed out a casual remark. If you can't bear it anymore, have Hong Jing come find me. He was worrying needlessly. That day will never come. The imperial consort's mausoleum is full, and craftsmen are needed to expand it. What should have been a project completed in a few days had, for some reason, dragged on for 3 weeks. The Empress Dowager's coffin had to be placed in a side chamber. Fortunately, it had been filled with enough incense to prevent the body from decomposing. But in early spring, the air was dry and parched. It was highly flammable. When smoke seeped through the cracks in the door, I touched the scorching wall, and my heart sank. Was it an accident, or arson? I did not know. Having spent half my life trying to read others' minds, I was too weary to guess anymore. The door was locked tight. I stood there in silence for a long time, but eventually returned to the coffin. The air was scorching, yet the Empress Dowager's remains felt cool to the touch. I gazed at her aged face. Suddenly, I recalled the year I was 7, when I was assigned to the Empress Dowager's palace as a cleaning maid. Back then, the Empress Dowager was still Lady Xing. A beauty. She came from a humble background and had a timid disposition. Despite being in the palace for 10 years, she had never been favored. She happened to see me crying while doing laundry and asked me gently what was wrong. If I had been bullied, when she learned my mother had passed away, even though she wasn't well off herself, she gave me 20 taels of silver without hesitation. I remember the moonlight that night was very cool. Consort Xun held me in her arms and gently comforted me all night long. I wept bitterly in her embrace, saying I had no mother. A soft glow bathed her youthful face. She wiped away my tears and said, "From now on, I'll be your mother." At that time, it had been only 3 years since she had given birth to Zhao Xun. I became her personal attendant. But most of my energy was devoted to Zhao Xun. There were many princes in the palace, and since his birth mother held a low rank, Zhao Xunwo happened to be exceptionally bright, was constantly bullied by his older brothers. He wasn't yet old enough to hide his feelings. So whenever he felt wronged, he would throw himself into my arms and sob silently, begging me to comfort him. The Empress resented the fact that Lady Xing had conceived a prince after just one night with the Emperor. She secretly instructed the Imperial Household Department to cut back on her winter coal and food rations. But Lady Xing held no grudge. She gathered me and Zhao Xun around the only remaining charcoal fire to roast sweet potatoes. Those were truly hard times. A sweet potato rolled around the circle. No one could bear to eat it. And in the end, it rolled right back into my hands. Zhao Xun's eyes sparkled. "A teo eat. If a teo is full, I'm full too." Consort Xing rested her chin in her hand, smiling as she watched us. She asked him, "Why are you so kind to A Tao?" Without a moment's hesitation, Zhao Xun replied, "Of course it's because I like A Tao. When I grow up, I'll buy A Tao lots and lots of treats so she can be happy every day. I'll become strong so no one can ever bully A Tao." It was all just idle talk. In childhood, He had once harbored a shallow fondness for me, like a basin of oil poured onto the raging fire of resentment. Over the course of those 10 years, he grew taller with every meeting, refined and stern. He was no longer an unloved prince, but a candidate for the throne, a noble and beautiful cousin nestled by his side. He looked at her with eyes full of love. He would no longer tug at my sleeve, smiling as he called me a Tao. Instead, he would meet me with cold, mocking glances and deliberately make things difficult for me. Even after the late Empress's death, he stopped me in my tracks with a cold laugh, his tone so cutting it bordered on the sharp. Why wasn't it you who died? It truly is the case that good people die young, while scourges live for 1,000 years. Just as he wished. I am about to die. Memorials from the officials have piled up like mountains. All demand that Zhao Xun honor filial piety, rebuild the mausoleum, and ensure the Empress Dowager's spirit finds peace. For a Empress Dowager, the Emperor's own Motherto have no place to lay her coffin is truly unheard of in history. Yet Zhao Xun paid no heed. He ordered the craftsmen not to begin work. A project that could have been completed in 3 days was delayed time and again. He recalled the night he learned Xin Tao had gone to guard the mausoleum. He had lain awake all night. He couldn't understand why she would give up her comfortable life as a concubine to go live in the mausoleum, leading the life of a living dead. It was the imperial consort who cut to the heart of the matter. Her coquettish smile tinged with sarcasm. The fact that Xin Tao abandoned your majesty all those years ago to curry favor with the Empress Dowager alone shows she is a scheming woman, greedy for fame and fortune. Who wouldn't want to be the emperor's consort? Pretending to want nothing is merely a way to get even more. That was it. A strategic retreat. The Empress Dowager had used this tactic on the late emperor, pretending not to compete or vie for anything, yet emerging victorious in the end. Xin Tao had mastered her methods to a T and was now using them on him. Unfortunately, he was not the late emperor. He would not be so easily deceived. Zhao Xun opened the memorial, his fingertip lightly tracing the character's mausoleum repairs before flinging it aside. No matter how fervently the officials petitioned, it was all in vain. He was waiting for Xin Tao to humble herself and come begging him. Then he could look down on her from his lofty position, grant her the title of concubine, and order the mausoleum to be properly restored so the Empress Dowager could rest in peace. But a week passed. 2 weeks passed. Still, no news came from the imperial mausoleum. A faint sense of unease settled in Zhao Xun's chest. He had a dream. In it, he returned to his childhood. He had been playing recklessly, dragging a Tao to the back mountain, only to fall into a large hole. It was the depths of winter, bitterly cold. He shivered uncontrollably from the cold. So a Tao took off her clothes and draped them all over him. She held him close, awkwardly breathing warm air onto his hands. Though she was so frozen she could barely speak, she earnestly encouraged him. Your Highness, you must pull through. This servant, I'm not cold, so please don't worry. But even if I die, I will watch over you and Her Majesty from heaven. You must survive, or the Empress Dowager will be heartbroken. He looked into her dark eyes, his heart trembling not with gratitude, but with a bitter ache tinged with an indescribable heaviness. In that moment, he desperately wanted to ask her, what about you? If I die, will you be sad? You're so kind to mice it all because of the Empress Dowager. Could even a tiny bit come from your own heart? Snowflakes melted on Ateo's nose, turning into tears. Carrying her bundle, she knelt before him, her expression sorrowful. Your Highness, this servant must leave. Where to? Zhao Xun struggled desperately to hold her back, only to find himself unable to move. He could only watch helplessly as Adao walked toward the figure in the distance, growing farther and farther away from him. Who would dare to snatch Atao away from him? Zhao Xun snapped his eyes open. A thin sheen of sweat had already formed on his forehead. A growing sense of unease gnawed at his heart. As if something vital were slipping away from him, he rolled out of bed and, without even putting on his shoes, set out to find Hong Jing. He had to see Xin Tao right now. He had taken only a few steps when his personal eunuch crawled in on his knees, looking panicked. Your Majesty, there's been an incident. The Empress Dowager's coffin had been left outside for too long. A spark from somewhere ignited it, and the entire funeral chamber has been reduced to ashes, completely destroyed, in the water towns of Jiangnan. 1,000 miles from the capital. I gasped and instinctively clutched the bedding tighter. What about the Empress Dowager's remains? Eunuch Hong smiled. When this servant rescued you, I had my godson transport the Empress Dowager's remains out and send them by water to Yangzhou. The Empress Dowager never wished to be buried in the imperial consort's mausoleum to begin with. Now that her spirit has returned to her hometown, her wish has been fulfilled. I still had my doubts, but what if the palace discovers the body is missing? Rest assured, young lady, Eunuch Hong said, we prepared 2 charred female corpses in advance. We can certainly pull the wool over everyone's eyes. If I didn't have absolute certainty, I wouldn't have dared to set that fire, would I? Eunuch Hong had served the Empress Dowager since entering the palace. He was her true confidant, utterly loyal. Before her passing, Her Majesty held on for an extra half hour. It was solely to clearly explain to him, one by one, the plans she had made for me. On the surface, she sent me to the imperial mausoleum. Behind the scenes, she orchestrated a massive fire to allow me to escape by feigning death. She even went so far as to personally create a false identity for me at her maternal home, the 3rd young lady of the Xing family, recuperating in the countryside. Thanks to the Empress Dowager's influence, the Xing family had risen from a modest scholarly household to become a prominent local clan. As the person the Empress Dowager had chosen to protect on her deathbed and having been personally escorted here by Eunuch Hong, everyone in the Xing household treated me with the utmost respect. On to P of that. The Empress Dowager had left me a great deal of land and shops. This ensured that even if I were to leave the Xing family one day, I could still live comfortably on my own. Eunuch Hong sighed. Her Majesty truly treated you as if you were her own daughter. Thinking of Her Majesty, I felt a pang of sadness, until Eunuch Hong brought over a mirror with a mysterious look on his face. I couldn't help but freeze in place. The young girl in the mirror was delicate and charming, with a lovely face. But this was clearly not my face. Eunuch Hong set the mirror down. While the Empress Dowager was alive, her greatest fear was that His Majesty would discover you. To be on the safe side, the Empress Dowager specifically instructed the servant to spend a fortune hiring a master physician to alter your features. Also, you would no longer have to live in fear. The Empress Dowager said, the sky is vast and the earth is wide. You are free to come and go as you please. The Xing family is now headed by the Empress Dowager's own brother and sister-in-law. Grateful for the Empress Dowager's kindness, they do not inquire about my identity but treat me as if I were one of their own. Yet ever since the day I moved in, the head of the Xing household has been constantly frowning. When I asked him about it, he snapped out of his reverie and waved his hands repeatedly. It has nothing to do with you, young lady. It's just that His Majesty has been so unpredictable lately. We, as his subjects, can't help but live in constant fear. What's wrong with Zhao Xun? I frowned. The head of the Xing family sighed. After the imperial mausoleum caught fire, His Majesty personally dug up the Empress Dowager's remains and fainted on the spot. When he woke up, he issued an edict to investigate the arsonist. But the results. The investigation led straight to the imperial consort. I've been by the Empress Dowager's side all these years. She certainly isn't one to show mercy, except when it comes to her own son, where she can be a bit indecisive. Most of the time, she's the kind to settle scores and fiercely protect her own. The imperial consort has bullied me for years. Yet she held her tongue. It was all for this very day, using a fire to plant the seeds of suspicion on the imperial consort. All the previous grievances were dealt with at once. The fire, of course, was an accident. This was the conclusion reached by the officials in charge, who, under the emperor's authority, had investigated tirelessly for several nights without sleep. Before the Golden Hall, the imperial consort cried out in distress. Your Majesty, can you believe in this servant now? Her eyes brimmed with tears. Zhao Xun's suspicion and coldness over the past few days had tormented her to the point of near collapse. But Zhao Xun did not even glance at her, his face expressionless. His hand, hidden beneath the table, trembled as he clenched it tightly. I do not believe you. He dared not believe this was an accident. The consort knew what he was thinking. Her sobs ceased, and she gave a cold laugh. Why does your majesty need to investigate the culprit? Was it not your majesty's insistence on delaying the construction of the imperial mausoleum that caused the Empress Dowager's coffin to remain outside, only to be engulfed by the fire? Zhao Xun turned to her with an icy stare, his gaze as cold as a frozen pond, freezing her in her tracks. Continue the investigation. The palace maids attending the imperial consort were tortured one by one. The things she had done to me poured out like a stream. For instance, she had falsely accused me of pushing her down the stairs, causing me to be punished by spending an entire night in the office of punishment. For instance, she had attempted to slip me an abortion potion when I was in labor. She bribed the midwife to try to save the child at the cost of my life, although I was lucky enough to survive. I suffered terribly during childbirth. Every single incident was backed by irrefutable evidence. Zhao Xun's palms grew colder and colder. He closed his eyes, and the image of a Tao's face during childbirth, her lips clenched tightly. Her complexion deathly pale and utterly helpless floated before him. At the time, he had simply assumed she was feigning weakness to win his sympathy, and he had dismissed her with disdain. But thinking back now, how much pain must she have been in at that moment? The eunuch cautiously observed the emperor's expression. After hesitating for a long moment, he continued his report. It wasn't just the consort's actions. The palace maid left behind by the late empress, who served by her side, recounted the events of the previous generation in full detail. She described how the late empress had once gone to great lengths to harass and frame consort Xing, pleading with the emperor to force her to hand over her own child. For those 10 years, she had constantly used Zhao Xun to vie for favor, even placing the imperial consort by his side. Their so-called childhood friendship was nothing more than a ploy to control her adopted son. The sound of shattering porcelain rang out. Everyone looked up, stunned, as the emperor, his face expressionless, crushed the teacup in his hand, blood flowing freely. His mother and a Tao had never abandoned him. It was he who had abandoned them. His Majesty has been ill for many days. He only began to recover slightly the day before yesterday and attended court despite his illness. The head of the Xing family lowered his voice. His Majesty has always favored the imperial consort. But this time he flew into a rage. He banished her to the cold palace with a cup of poisoned wine. And the 2 princes were implicated as well. I listened in silence. None of this had anything to do with the 3rd young lady of the Xing family anymore. After settling in, I began managing the estates the Empress Dowager had left me. There were fields, tea houses, and restaurants. My sister-in-law from the Xing family came from the wealthiest family in Yangzhou and had been in business since childhood. She taught me patiently, and I quickly got the hang of it. I went out early and returned late to inspect the properties, though it was hard work. Being addressed as Madame Xing wherever I went, this life of standing tall and making a fortune every day, I actually found joy in it. Before I knew it, Qingyang had passed, and the rainy season had arrived in Jiangnan. I caught a chill and was confined to bed. My sister-in-law from the Xing family summoned a physician. The young doctor was only 18, with a fresh-faced, delicate appearance. Yet his medical skills were excellent. After a few doses of medicine, I was nearly fully recovered. However, there was something peculiar about this young doctor. Though the consultation was supposed to last only half an incense stick's worth of time, he dragged it out to a full hour every single time. Whenever our eyes met, he would unconsciously avert his gaze, his fair cheeks flushing slightly. The boy's bashful demeanor was like a crisp, sweet, and tempting green apple. I reached out to touch his earlobe and couldn't resist teasing him. Why is this spot so red? The young man, startled like a bird caught in a trap, fled in a panic. He nearly collided with my sister-in-law, who had come to visit. She covered her mouth with her fan, a half-smile playing on her lips. That boy has a mischievous mind. I quickly spoke up for him, feeling a bit embarrassed. I was just acting on a whim, teasing him. Hearing this, my sister-in-law laughed even more heartily. You've finally come to your senses. She sat down beside me and said earnestly, "You're a man of means now. How can you manage without someone at home who cares for you? You tend to the business every day. But when you return to your room, your bed is cold. Your tea is cold. And there's no one to warm your bed at night. It must be so hard on you." Seeing my hesitation, my sister-in-law sighed. "If I hadn't been so stubborn back then, insisting on marrying your brother, I could have married a few fine men by now, couldn't I?" I'd almost forgotten my sister-in-law's family was among the wealthiest in Yangzhou. I was tempted. I asked my sister-in-law to look into that doctor's background for me. She set off on the errand and returned in high spirits. Jiang Sui's parents died young. His family is poor, with only a few acres of barren land, but his medical skills are second to none. That's not what I wanted to hear. I interrupted her with a smile. My sister-in-law paused, then quickly caught on, winking. "Don't worry, though he's treated many female patients. He's a man of impeccable character, a proper gentleman. His grandmother is gravely ill and urgently needs a large sum of silver for treatment. This is a golden opportunity." I felt reassured, but Jiang Sui started avoiding me. My sister-in-law muttered disdainfully, "Now he's playing hard to get." I just laughed it off and went about my rounds as usual. I even took my sister-in-law's advice, bought the brothel, and turned it into Qingfeng Pavilion, a shelter specifically for homeless boys. One day, as I was leaving Qingfeng Pavilion, a torrential downpour began outside. A young attendant nearby, sensing the moment, approached with an umbrella. "Boss, let me walk you home." I saw the flattery in his eyes, smiled, patted his cheek, took the umbrella from his hand, and gently pushed him away. The moment I opened the umbrella, however, I froze slightly. The boy stood in the rain, staring at me coldly, his eyes slightly red. I was dazed for a moment. I quickly snapped out of it, shook my head, and walked toward the carriage. With every step I took, he followed, like a stray dog testing the waters, eager yet hesitant, wavering and conflicted. I climbed into the carriage and smiled at him. "Get in." I took his hand. It was hot, dry, and pulsed with the strength of youth. Inside the carriage, he didn't sit down. I looked down at him. My gaze swept over his long, thick lashes, his damp bangs, his handsome features. He kept his eyes lowered, his breath trembling slightly. This expression of suppressed emotion was all too familiar to me. Once, I too had knelt in humiliation beneath Zhao Xun, allowing him to scrutinize me with mocking indifference. I leaned down and kissed Jiang Sui gently, watching his adorable trembling. I slipped a stack of silver notes into his lap, leaned back slightly, and sighed softly. "Good boy. Come with me." Jiang Sui was a very capable son-in-law. By day, he went out to see patients as usual. In the afternoon, he would return home to wash my undergarments and research various dishes to nourish my body. Every day when I came home, I could enjoy a warm meal, all my favorite foods. Once night fell, he would use the techniques he'd taught himself on me, kissing me gently, his eyes glistening with moisture. "So careful. Are you satisfied?" "Very satisfied. I never knew such things could bring such pleasure." Seeing my dazed eyes, he seemed to understand something, chuckled softly, and worked even harder. Before our marriage, I had told Jiang Sui that I had given birth to 2 children in the past. I still remember the agonizing pain of being torn apart during childbirth. Barring any accidents, I would never have children again. Jiang Sui said nothing upon hearing this. He merely took my pulse. Lowering his eyes, he calmly withdrew his hand. "Your constitution is too weak. You truly aren't suited for childbearing. Don't worry. I have a family heirloom contraceptive potion. I'll take it myself. You don't have to do a thing." In the 2nd year of our marriage, a distant branch of the Xing family suffered a tragedy, leaving behind only an orphaned girl. The girl was only 2 years old and looked truly pitiful. After discussing it with Jiang Sui, we decided to take her in. Jiang Sui gained one more task each evening, putting the child to sleep. During the Lantern Festival, Jiang Sui and I took our daughter out to see the lanterns. Luxurious carriages and ornate floats filled the streets, and the crowds were thick. Jiang Sui held our daughter in one arm and wrapped his other arm around me, afraid I might get trampled. I smiled and took his hand, our fingers intertwining. "I want to kiss you." Jiang Sui was usually reserved. His ears turned slightly red, and his voice dropped. "There are so many people here." Despite his words, he still leaned down toward me. The crowd was so thick it knocked me off balance. Just as I lost my footing, someone caught me, a deep voice murmuring, "Be careful." My body froze. By the time I looked up, the man had already walked away, leaving only a cold, upright silhouette. I stared blankly for a long time, then closed my eyes. I felt as though it had been a phantom. Little did I expect that. Upon returning to the Xing household, the lady of the Xing household beamed as she beckoned to me. "Rujia, come quickly and meet our distinguished guest." The Xing family was the Empress Dowager's clan, the emperor's maternal family, with the emperor traveling south in disguise. It was only natural for him to stay at the Xing residence. This was the highest honor for the entire Xing household. The lady of the Xing household knew nothing of my background. She simply wished, out of kindness, for me to make an appearance before the emperor and bask in his glory. Upon hearing the commotion, Zhao Xun turned his cold, piercing gaze toward me. Our eyes met. I held my breath and kept my head down, saying nothing. His gaze swept over my face without a flicker of emotion, and he nodded faintly. "Third Miss Xing, I have heard of your reputation. For a woman to make a name for herself in the Yangzhou Merchants Guild, that takes real grit." The more detached his tone, the more restless I became. Keeping my head down in silence, if I spoke, it would be the end of me. At that critical moment, my master spoke up to save the day. "Your Majesty overpraises her. My daughter is merely fumbling about on her own. She's nothing but a laughingstock. Had she not been suffering from a cold all day and unable to speak, I would certainly have had her apologize to you. It is no exaggeration." The inn by the river, the pawn shop at the southern gate, all were established by Miss Xing San. Zhao Xun paused, then looked at me calmly once more. "However, these businesses were all once my late mother's private property." My heart skipped a beat. Fortunately, Eunuch Han had accompanied Zhao Xun this time. He bowed and smiled obsequiously. "Your Majesty, have you forgotten? When the Empress Dowager was young, she was cared for by Miss Xing San's parents. The Empress Dowager, wishing to repay that kindness, specifically instructed that her assets be left to Miss Xing San as her dowry. Now that Miss Xing San has married into her husband's family, these assets naturally remain in her possession. A subtle thread, a hidden plot stretching for miles. My identity as Miss Xing San was a fallback plan the Empress Dowager had chosen for me after deep deliberation. There were no loopholes. A moment of silence. Zhao Xun nodded calmly. "I see. I shall provide a new wedding gift." During Zhao Xun's stay at the Xing residence, I claimed to be ill and rarely went out. Yet I still ran into Zhao Xun. He stood tall and graceful, gazing at the petals scattered across the ground. Lost in thought. It had been a mere 2 years since we last met. He looked much thinner, and his demeanor had grown cold and aloof. Upon seeing me, Zhao Xun nodded distantly. "Miss Xing," amidst the sparse shadows of the apricot blossoms. I curtsied to him from a distance. As I rose, my head spun slightly. Someone reached out before my maidservant could, steadying me. When I realized it was Zhao Xun, my heart skipped a beat, and I forced a smile as I took 2 steps back. Zhao Xun withdrew his hand without changing his expression. I was presumptuous. I had forgotten that third Miss Xing is already married. However, his gaze swept over the red rash on my neck, and he said slowly, "Third Miss Xing, it seems you are having an allergic reaction. There was once someone in my entourage who was allergic to apricot blossoms. It nearly cost them their life. Miss Xing, you should have a doctor examine you." I instinctively covered my neck and shook my head. I am indeed allergic to apricot blossoms. But since I hadn't had an episode in years, I'd put it out of my mind. Why on earth did this old ailment have to flare up at a time like this? Zhao Xun gazed quietly at the woman before him. Her every smile and frown bore a striking resemblance to the person in his dreams. When they first met, he caught a fleeting glimpse of her and almost blurted out, "A Tao." Yet, strangely, she had a face that bore no resemblance to hers at all. So much alike, yet not at all. He lowered his eyes, clenching the hands behind his back tightly. The husband of the third Miss Xing had tracked her down in the garden and taken her away. They seemed very much in love. And now they had a daughter. But Atao's body had long since been unable to bear children. Never mind. Zhao Xun shook his head and smiled, mocking his own foolish delusions. Though the Xing family was a distinguished clan, the scenery of their garden could not compare to the imperial garden. It was nothing special. He had no heart to continue his tour and turned to leave. As he passed a cluster of flowers, he heard a woman's soft, gentle voice. "Eunuch Hong, when exactly will His Majesty be leaving?" Zhao Xun's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Eunuch Hong had told me that Zhao Xun would be staying at the Xing residence for another 7 days. I decided to stay with my daughter in Jiangshui and slip away for a while. Unfortunately, that evening was the Empress Dowager's anniversary. Zhao Xun was to hold a memorial service for the Empress Dowager at the Xing residence, and all the younger generation of the Xing family were required to be present. I had no choice but to wait one more night. I would wait until the memorial service was over and then find an opportunity to speak to my master. The banquet was held at the largest restaurant in Yangzhou, and the atmosphere was somber. My master had a few too many cups of wine and, feeling dizzy, slumped onto the table before being helped away. My gaze followed him as he left. Suddenly, I bumped into Zhao Xun. His expression was cold, unusually so. "Third Miss Xing. What's wrong?" "Nothing." I felt inexplicably chilled under his stare and nervously looked away. My daughter was already tired, dozing off with her head resting on Jiang Sui's shoulder. I said to him, "Why don't you take the child back to the room to sleep first?" Jiang Sui nodded in agreement. He touched my flushed cheek, furrowed his brow, and admonished, "Your period is coming soon. You should drink less." I smiled and playfully hit him. "You're such a nag." This scene was witnessed by someone standing not far away. The corners of his mouth were turned up, yet he was clutching his wine cup so tightly it looked as if it might shatter. After 3 rounds of drinking, the gathering finally dispersed. I was in a hurry to return to the Xing Manor, but in the long corridor of the tavern, I spotted a figure teetering on the brink of collapse. It was Zhao Xun. With no one else around, he leaned weakly against the railing, his face pale. It seemed as if he had fallen ill. After much hesitation, I walked over. If anything were to happen to him at the Xing Manor, I feared the lives of everyone in the household would be at stake. The man lifted his eyelids wearily, his voice weak. "Third Miss Xing. I'm afraid I've made a fool of myself. I've had too much to drink. I'm dizzy and nauseous, and I can't find my way back to my room. There's a bowl of hangover remedy over there. Could you bring it to me?" Zhao Xun really couldn't hold his liquor. He always felt unwell after drinking too much. Unfortunately, he was allergic to the kudzu flowers in the hangover soup. Only longan tea could cure his hangover. Coincidentally, both bowls were on the table. Without a second thought, I picked up the longan tea. I watched as he downed it in one gulp. Suddenly, I felt something was off, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Until Zhao Xun asked me calmly, "Miss Xing-san, why didn't you bring me the hangover remedy?" My heart skipped a beat. How on earth did both the hangover remedy and the longan tea end up on the table? In the moonlight, Zhao Xun gave a sinister smile and said, enunciating each word, "In this world, there are only 2 people who know I cannot drink the hangover remedy. One is my birth mother, who breathed her last before my very eyes, and the other." I drew a sharp breath, trembling uncontrollably under his icy gaze. Just as I was about to turn and flee, someone clamped a hand around my throat, pulling me into his embrace. The next moment, Zhao Xun's harsh voice rang in my ear. "Shen, Tao, how long do you intend to keep deceiving me?" I tried to push Zhao Xun away, but he held me tighter and tighter in his arms, until I could barely breathe. Weakly, I managed to say, You've mistaken me for someone else. Mistaken. Zhao Xun sneered. Then perhaps I should tear your clothes off right now and confirm it once more. I fell silent. I dared not provoke this madman any further. His eyes suddenly crinkled as he smiled at me. Was it the Empress Dowager who plotted to have you flee for your life? Or was it my mother? Out of concern for me, the identity of the third miss of the Xun family is perfect. I shall issue an edict at once to bring you into the palace. What title do you desire? Concubine, imperial consort, or shall I crown you empress outright? I watched him silently as he muttered excitedly to himself. After a long while, I interrupted wearily. If your majesty wants my life, then bring me into the palace. Zhao Xun's expression darkened instantly. What do you mean? I am already married. I knelt on the ground, my body trembling. My husband and my child, they are my life, and the career I've worked so hard to build in Yangzhou, along with the respect I've earned and the independence that frees me from relying on others. The very thought of returning to the palace and being separated from them is worse than death. I knew that at this moment. Not mentioning Jiang Suikai was the best way to protect him, but with things having come to this, I had no choice but to take a gamble on Zhao Xun's conscience. He had reigned for many years and was a wise ruler. Under the moonlight, as clear as water, the man stared at me blankly. You've fallen in love with him. There was even a hint of tremor in his voice. I didn't know how to answer, so I remained silent. The next moment, Zhao Xun grabbed me by the throat once more, his voice filled with overwhelming hatred. You've fallen in love with someone else. What about me, Ateo? You don't love me anymore. How could you not love me? I shook my head repeatedly, nearly suffocating. Suddenly, I spotted a dark figure at the eaves. Drawing a bow, the icy arrowhead was aimed directly at Zhao Xun's back. My mind went blank, my eyes widened, and I pushed Zhao Xun away with all my strength. Immediately, excruciating pain shot through my chest. The arrow had pierced my left shoulder. It had missed my heart by mere inches. Thank goodness for Jiang Sui. He saved me. Throughout the whole ordeal, I didn't feel much pain, but tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. When he pulled the arrow out, his hands were trembling. The bleeding stopped, but the arrowhead was poisoned. I lay in a daze for several days. In a moment of clarity, I saw Zhao Xun kneeling by my bedside, his face pale as he stared at the wound on my chest. Then I saw Jiang Sui actually punch Zhao Xun with the ferocity of someone willing to destroy his entire clan, his expression cold and almost serene. I don't care who you are. If she dies, I'll drag you down with me. Zhao Xun refused to back down. What do you have to be smug about? She shielded me from an arrow. Did she ever shield you? She bore me 2 children. Did she ever bear you any? Atao and I have been together for years. She loved me with all her heart. His voice trailed off on the last few words. Then there was a long silence. Jiang Sui said coldly, So it was you all along. Unfortunately, no matter how defiant Jiang Sui was, he couldn't stand up to imperial authority. In the end, Zhao Xun still took me for himself. He held my hand, murmuring by my bedside day after day. Ateo, I was wrong. I shouldn't have suspected you and the Empress Dowager. I shouldn't have treated you this way. When I first arrived at the Empress's palace, I couldn't sleep a wink, fearing she would harm me. Every night, I was terrified that the Empress Dowager would bear another child, and that you would love only that child and cast me aside. Ateo, I was truly afraid. Mother is dead now. You cannot leave me again. A few more days passed. Zhao Xun came to my bedside once more, his sleeves hanging empty. He sat silently at my bedside for a long time, his expression somewhere between a smile and a tear. He said he remembered it all. He remembered how, in the previous life, after I entered the palace, he had treated me badly. He also remembered those brief, tender moments when we were together day and night, as if we were husband and wife. Whether sweet or painful, those memories now cut like knives. gouging deeply into his heart. It was all gone now. A Teo, who loved him as if her life depended on it, there would never be another like her in this world. He whispered, "You've been reborn too, haven't you? That's why you're trying to escape from me, isn't it?" Only silence answered him. After a long while, I heard Zhao Xun's voice, clear and deliberate. "I have lost. Wake up. I no longer wish for you to enter the palace, as long as you are alive. I swear I will never appear before you again for the rest of my life. A ruler's word is final." 3 months have passed since Zhao Xun left. He kept his word. Like a wisp of evaporating water, he vanished silently from my life. After I woke up, I never saw him again. Everything that happened that night felt like nothing more than a dream. But on the day after His Majesty's return, the head of the Xing family summoned me with a complex expression and handed me a jade pendant. The emperor said, "This is a gift for you. No matter what difficulties you face in the future, you may take this to the capital. As long as he remains on the throne, he will certainly resolve your troubles." I snorted derisively. As soon as I stepped out of the room, I tossed the jade pendant into the lake. Upon his return to the capital, the first thing Zhao Xun did was exile the 2 princes to remote regions to serve as feudal lords. To safeguard the foundation of the kingdom, he selected several members of the imperial clan of upright character as candidates for the throne. From that day forward, they had no chance of ascending to the throne. I returned to my peaceful life. When news of the national mourning arrived, the family was cutting paper cutouts. The scissors fell to the floor. I froze. How could this be? It was all too sudden. The head of the Xing family sighed. "I hear it was a sudden, severe illness. He died instantly, and the manner of his death was gruesome." My sister-in-law frowned. "A disease. It sounds more like poisoning. Shoo, we mustn't speak such nonsense." I listened in a daze. Of everyone present, only Jiang Sui remained impassive. He calmly picked up the scissors that had fallen to the floor and looked at me. He deserved to die. His tone was icy. Back then, when I was struck by an arrow and narrowly escaped death, he wept with joy when I woke up. His gaze just as cold. "Anyone who harms you deserves to die, Rujia. I won't let him off the hook." Coming to my senses, I agreed. What a pity. Zhao Xun has gone to the underworld to serve the Empress Dowager. He will never appear before me again. All the resentment, the humiliation, and the messy past, all of it has been buried with him. The sky is high and the earth is vast. I am truly free to come and go as I please. I took Jiang Sui's hand. "It's so good. The story has come to an end. Thank you all for sticking with me. See you in the next one."